Dieter asked questioningly, "Hey, Maestro, have you had any luck translating that book yet? I noticed you staring at it half of the night. You seemed rather engrossed, if I do say so myself." While he awaited the wizard's response, he used his scalpel to add more powdered horn to the mix. All the while an ill feeling hung over the forest. It was as though the danger was ever present, but not from any one position. His train of thought was interrupted by the wizard's high-pitched, annoying voice. "Actually, Dieter, I think I may have got it. The answer to the text finally came to me in a dream. It says, and I quote from the dark scripture here," before he continued, another scouting group charged out of the forest. "Yes, Maestro, hold that thought, would you?" Dieter ordered Ulga to charge in, and the great Doberman did as he was told. Dieter glanced back briefly at the wizard after hearing talking coming from the man. What at first the trainee doctor thought to be the recitation of the book's passages was actually a spell of some kind. Dieter ducked and found himself wishing Morsleb was high in the sky, since only then was the halfling of any real use as he saw it. Dieter's critical eye turned next to Rysandria. "Silly girl, put the damned gun away. It will do you no good here and waste precious ammunition." From a near-crouched position, Dieter swung the crisp blade in an upward arc, rending the beast man's flesh as though it were tissue paper. With but a thought, the blade glowed white-hot as he pulled it back along the same arc, searing the flesh closed, while keeping the creature bleeding internally. "Anybody have an objection to me bringing this entire cadaver back with us? Since I have been with you lot, my medical training has lessened between the constant fights." Rysandria looked sickened by the request. "How can you even call for such a thing? That creature of chaos, though it may be, is suffering in the last vestiges of life, and you want to use its body to further your own endeavours? Can't you at least end its suffering? In Shalier's name, I beseech you. Or perhaps you would only listen to Moore himself at this point." At the mention of the death and dream god's name, Dieter turned on his heel, weapon drawn, and strode towards the young priestess in training, his eyes blazing with mal-intent and rage. "You may call upon your mother or whatever she is from time to time, and I accept that, you being her subordinate, her vessel, on this mortal plane, so to speak. However, if you so much as mention his name around me again, so help me, I will personally escort your soul to him. I will even go as far as to put you on the death barge and sail you through the underworld myself. Are we clear?" Dieter raised the crisp blade and saw in the corner of his eye Tordrad step towards him. Before he could lose all control, Dieter threw the blade backwards, sailing through the air and embedding itself into the brain of the till now just dying beast man, snarling at her. "Satisfied now?" With that, the doctor strode to retrieve both the horns and his sword. "Wizard, while I am busy cutting out these horns, why don't you tell us all what that book says, please?" Glancing backwards, he offered Rysandria what he thought then was a comforting smile, or what it should look like at least. It was just a guess. Later that day he chastised himself for losing it with the woman. He couldn't afford to split with them, or cause them to want to do so, lest he be separated from their sides for too long. He just knew that Moore would then have some agent or another in his service trying to kill the group, just to spite him. Yes, he was convinced of that. Still, though, the temper and anger within him was worsening with each passing month. He was having to eat more and more of the gunpowder-based cookies just to push down the headaches, as he called them. Extract from the diary of Rysandria, day 57. "Dieter and I had a startling confrontation today. He always seemed to hold back some darker nature. But today my mention of the god Moore caused the chains holding the doctor's other side to rattle, almost to the point of snapping, it seemed. I genuinely feared for my life. As I looked into those eyes, There was little of the man I had travelled with for the last 50 or so days. What lay just beneath the skin is something of pure darkness, malevolence. I hold a new level of respect and fear towards the man now. At first I believed his aversion to more to be a habit of his chosen profession. After all, what he does best is keep from more those who would normally be welcomed into his eternal domain. But Dieter's hatred goes deeper even than that. I wonder if he himself even truly understands how he feels. I only mentioned it because I know he always does anyway. Just when he's off to take a nap in the day, he reminds us all of how he wants to keep his dreams to himself and not have them defiled by more at night, and so on. Oh dear, Dieter, what is going on with you? Extract from the diary of Tordrad.
Dieter and Holy Girl had argument earlier. Things got heated. I thought Wizard would ask me to help break it up, but Doctor, he knew better than let it come to that. There is something dangerous below his surface. Must be cautious, for Wizard's sake. Spending too much time worrying about evil of male wizard, I might not notice even bigger peril in group.
Yes, as I was saying before those creatures so rudely interrupted, started Maestro, it says, the red flayer, proud and merciless, the child of corn, spat in his father's eye. The blood god drained his husk, but the essence of the red flayer survives. He still lives in the brass skull. He still lives in the dagger of Yul Kacham. He still lives in the chalice of wrath. Trapped and bound, he craves blood. The red flayer will rise again. I must tell you all, though, those writers had very little punctuation skills. It made that a bloody hard read. Bloody hard. Maestro began to wrap up his recitation as Dieter poured some alcohol and spat some of his special herb bars into the chalice with the Beastman horn powder. Lighting a flint, Dieter threw a lit stick into the goblet, causing a small explosion which blackened his face momentarily. Sorry, Maestro, I didn't interrupt, did I? The incense is prepared. It doesn't smell nice, but it should keep them at bay for the most part. He saw Maestro's eyebrows rise questioningly. He knew what the wizard was going to ask. He was going to ask how Dieter had learned such things. These were things that would hint at a person being a hedge wizard, one of the illegal outlaw casters of the Empire, a person gifted or cursed in sensitivity to the winds of magic, but without training. A wizard without training, as the Magisters taught, was a danger to the Empire, an easy target for the embrace of chaos. Hedge wizards would be arrested and put to death regularly, but surely Dieter couldn't have been one of those. Surely not. He is a doctor. Everyone knows that. One would simply be worrying needlessly. Once more, Dieter's strong ability of constant hypnotic suggestion, words, and actions that tricked and played upon the subconscious mind to make it miss certain things it might otherwise see, did their job. He always had the group in a mild, constant state of delusion, and there was nothing they could do about it, because they didn't know it was happening. Dieter then sealed his technique home with a distracting question. As a celestial wizard, you can sometimes access the future, can you not? At this, Maestro used his telescope to better grasp the Asia and began to scry the future, relaying the information he received to them as he himself was reading it. While he would use the alignments of the stars above as his basis, he did not perform the feats of an astrologer per se, for the stars were merely the ever-shifting yet undeniable constant of a basis of inspiration, of focus. The powerful wind of Asia was like a thin mist that rose into the sky upon its arrival into the physical plane from whence it came. The blanket of raw Asia power could be read across the stars and spells that could be cast basing around their alignments as a focuser. Maestro began. I see a barricade on the road. Lots and lots of beast men standing around it. Yes, it must be a trap. I also see a broken wheel. One on this caravan has broken near the back. Our lanterns are out and there are many enemies closing in. No, this cannot be right. I see a bright wizard." The wizard began to come out of his trance, slightly giddy before continuing, "Well, that is all I saw. I hope I was mistaken, but I would hate for us to fight so many beastmen." Dieter glared at the wizard through hooded eyes. He thought of telling him that the bright wizard was already here, but thought better of it. Something about the man reeked of danger and something else that the trainee physician could not place. Dieter was sat on the lip above the wheel and his back to the caravan while the wizard read quietly, almost to himself now, from the book, his burlap sack of horns dripping along the road. That in itself was of little concern, since Olga kept pace and lapped at the blood almost before it hit the ground. The sense of danger and his headaches were stronger now. Taking the wizard's low mumbling as a good cover, the doctor called upon powers he didn't fully understand, and placed his staff on the caravan itself, where it stood seemingly as though held in place by some unseen force. "Don't worry, Maestro. Olga shall protect you, as no doubt will Tordrad. I'd say if anyone were to bring you foul of harm, it would be Tobias. He seems to be of fickle thought and fouler of mood as of late, especially in the evening." They were now aware of the presence of a man amongst their caravan, a man who didn't look it but was identified as being a wizard. Dieter subtly pointed Maestro in the right direction. Maestro then proclaimed to the group that he had discovered the whereabouts of the wizard at last amongst the travellers. Dieter had mentioned then that the man gives him a bad feeling. The halfling shuffled up to Maestro, standing between the doctor in training and the wizard.
"You know, Dieter, just because he has not helped us does not mean he is bad. He has clearly finished a tour on the front lines. We can hardly expect him to fight such lowly creatures as those we fought earlier."
Dieter thought on his words and just grunted. "I suppose you are right. How do you feel since our fight with Blackrot? I must say you seem to hold your own quite well, at least against the smaller myriad of forces." Dieter grinned at last, but decided that he should give the halfling a break. The undersized moot dweller deserved at least a short cessation from their oft-times mutual hostilities. Lysandria spoke. "I must say I feel the gods themselves smiled on us, allowing our mutual forces to push back the tide of chaos, for as long as it might last anyhow." Dieter glared at the woman. He felt tired both mentally and physically, and it was hard work keeping up this heroic disposition. The bunkum hip hip hooray for the Empire mentality that was expected from most adventuring men. He limped to the back of the caravan to gain some space, and more importantly, peace in which to meditate, leaving his staff leaning against the middle procession as he did so. Olga began to follow his master, but was waved away. His eyes and Dieter's met, and the dog jumped up on the lip of the vehicle, curling up around his human pack leader's staff. The rest of the daylight hours passed without incident. Later, after the sun sank below the rim of the world and Morsleb shone brightly upon the group, the cart that led their procession was forced to stop as the rear wheel warped and cracked. Remembering what Maestro had said, the group jumped into action. The crew of the parade was decisive, and the wheel was replaced before there was such a sign of attack. To feel secure, Dieter relit the basin of crushed beastmen horns, and the group travelled alongside the procession. A mile ahead, they came across a barricade blocking the road, but no sign of the apparent beastmen who had surely constructed it, based on its crude design. All of them felt uneasy. Had Maestro been wrong in his vision, or was this part of the trap? Olga stopped and looked behind them, growling low in his throat. "What is it, boy? What do you hear?" Dieter needn't have asked, as he already felt it. A large mob of the creatures they had fought on and off that day. The beings had been following them, being kept at bay only by the power in Dieter's clandestine spell, and the formula which slowly cooked in the bowl.